Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks ordinary, but could quietly be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's ancient, not because it's gold, but because it holds a hidden story that most people never notice. Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1961 D Lincoln penny, a small copper coin that has surprised collectors for decades. The 1961 D Lincoln cent was minted in Denver and features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. At first glance, it looks just like millions of other pennies from the early 1960s. But this coin represents a fascinating moment in American history, right before major changes came to U.S. coinage. And while most of these pennies are common, a few rare examples have sold for eye-opening prices. Let's step back to the year 1961. America was in the middle of huge cultural and political change. John F. Kennedy had just become president. The space race was heating up. The Cold War shaped global tension. And at the same time, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of everyday coins to keep the economy moving. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909, had become one of the most widely used coins in the country. By 1961, the Lincoln Memorial design had been on the reverse side for just 2 years, making this penny part of a still fresh chapter in coin history. The Denver Mint struck over 1.7 billion Lincoln cents in 1961. That massive number means most examples you'll find today are worth only face value. But large mintages don't always tell the full story. What matters most to collectors is condition, rarity within condition, and unusual minting errors. And that's where this penny starts to get interesting. The 1961 D Lincoln penny is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This gives it that warm reddish tone collectors love. It weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. On the front, Lincoln's portrait faces right with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date to the right. Just below the date is the small D mint mark, showing it was struck in Denver on the back. You'll see the Lincoln Memorial, with tiny statues and architectural details that are surprisingly sharp on well-preserved coins. Above the building are the words "United States of America," and below it reads 1 cent. Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln, making this one of the most detailed designs ever used on a U.S. coin. Now, here's where things get exciting. While most 1961 D pennies are common, a small number were struck with errors or preserved in near-perfect condition, and those coins can be surprisingly valuable. One of the most sought-after versions is the 1961 D penny in high mint state condition with full red color. Copper coins naturally darken over time, turning brown. Coins that retain their original red color are much rarer, especially after more than 60 years. Another major factor is minting errors. Some 1961 D pennies were struck off-center, showing part of the design missing. Others have double dies, where letters or numbers appear doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. There are also clipped planchets, where part of the metal blank was cut incorrectly before striking. These errors make coins unique, and collectors are willing to pay serious money for them. So, how valuable can a 1961 D penny really be? Most circulated examples are worth only 1 or 2 cents. Even uncirculated coins often sell for just a few dollars. But when you move into top condition, the numbers change dramatically. In professional grading terms, a coin graded MS67 red, which means near perfect with full red copper color, can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. One standout example was a 1961 D Lincoln cent graded MS67 red that sold at auction for over $2,000. That's for a penny most people would never look twice at. Error coins can also command impressive prices. Some off-center strikes from this year have sold for several $100s, and dramatic double-die examples can go even higher, depending on clarity and condition. So how can you tell if you might have a valuable one? Start with the mint mark. Look just below the date. If there's a small D, it was made in Denver. Next, check the condition. Does the coin still look bright red or orange, or has it turned brown? Redder usually means more valuable. Look closely at the lettering and numbers. Do any appear doubled or thicker than normal? That could indicate a doubling error. Also inspect the edges and shape. If part of the design is missing or the coin looks uneven, It could be an off-center strike or clipped planchet. Weighing the coin can help too. A normal 1961 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A noticeable difference could point to an unusual planchet or error. And if you think you've found something special, it's always best to have the coin examined by a professional grading service. They can authenticate it, confirm errors, and assign a grade that determines market value. Now, let's talk about counterfeits. While fake 1961 pennies are rare because the coin is common, altered coins do exist. Some people add fake doubling or modify dates to imitate rarer varieties. To avoid this, always look for natural wear patterns, sharp design details, and consistent surfaces. Real mint errors usually look organic and flow naturally with the design. Anything that looks carved, scratched, or unevenly added could be suspicious. One fun fact about the 1961 penny is that it was struck during the final years of real copper US cents. In 1982, the mint switched to zinc cores with thin copper plating to reduce costs. That means the 1961 penny contains nearly 3 cents worth of copper by modern metal prices, although melting coins for their metal value is illegal. Still, it adds to the appeal of these older cents. Another interesting detail is how few people saved coins in pristine condition during this era. In the early 1960s, pennies were everyday objects. Most people spent them, dropped them, or tossed them into jars. Very few were set aside in rolls or albums in perfect shape. That's why high-grade examples of otherwise common dates like 1961 can become surprisingly scarce decades later. Collectors today love this coin because it represents the golden age of circulating American copper cents. It's affordable for beginners, yet challenging for advanced collectors trying to build top-condition sets. It also tells a story of American life before inflation reshaped the value of everyday money, when a penny could still buy something meaningful, like candy, stamps, or a phone call. There's also something special about the Lincoln Memorial design itself. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real building on the reverse side, and the first to show the same person on both sides of a coin, since Lincoln's statue appears inside the memorial. That design choice made the penny both artistic and symbolic, honoring one of the nation's most respected presidents. What makes the 1961 penny especially intriguing is how it reminds us that valuable coins don't always look rare. Some of the most exciting finds come from pocket change, old jars, or forgotten collections. A coin that once passed through countless hands at grocery stores and gas stations might now be sitting quietly in a drawer, waiting to be rediscovered. And that's the magic of numismatics. It's not just about money. It's about history, chance, and the thrill of noticing something others overlook. Every coin tells a story, but some stories are louder than others. The 1961 Lincoln penny whispers its story, hiding in plain sight, rewarding those who take a closer look. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't rush to spend it. Hold it up to the light. Check the date. Look for that tiny mint mark. You might be holding a simple piece of copper, or a small piece of American history worth far more than you ever expected. And who knows, the next remarkable coin discovery might already be in your pocket right now, just waiting for you to notice it. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But what if I told you one ordinary-looking coin from 1967 could quietly hold a story worth thousands of dollars? Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions owned, but very few truly understand. The 1967 Lincoln cent is one of those coins that feels familiar. It's copper-colored, features Abraham Lincoln on the front, and seems no different from the pennies many of us grew up using in change jars or piggy banks. But behind its simple appearance lies a fascinating chapter in U.S. coin history. A year when the mint made unusual decisions that changed how coins were produced, and in some rare cases, created pieces that collectors now treasure. Let's start with what this coin actually is. The 1967 Lincoln penny was struck during a time when the United States Mint temporarily removed mint marks from all coins. That means whether the coin was made in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, none of them carried a letter beneath the date. Every 1967 penny looks like it came from the same place, even though millions were produced across multiple mints. That single detail alone makes this year stand out from most others in the Lincoln cent series. To understand why, we have to go back to the 1960s. America was facing a serious coin shortage. Rising metal prices caused people to hoard coins, especially silver, and everyday change was becoming harder to find. The U.S. Mint needed a fast solution. So in 1965, they made a bold move. They removed mint marks entirely to discourage collectors from pulling specific coins out of circulation. The idea was simple. If all coins looked the same, people wouldn't hoard them, and more coins would stay in circulation. That policy lasted from 1965 through 1967. So the 1967 penny became part of this unusual 3-year window where mint marks disappeared completely. At the same time, proof coins, the highly polished versions made for collectors, were also paused. Instead, the mint produced special mint sets without mint marks, adding even more mystery to coins from this period. Now let's talk about what the coin looks like. On the front, or obverse, is Victor David Brenner's iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, first introduced in 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the word liberty, and to the right is the date, 1967. The phrase "In God We Trust" arcs along the top edge. The reverse side features the Lincoln Memorial, a design used from 1959 to 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, making it one of the few U.S. coins where the same person appears on both sides. The 1967 penny is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing about 3.11 grams. That rich copper composition gives it a warm reddish color when new, though most coins today have darkened with age. Because copper prices have risen over the years, these older pennies even have melt value, though melting them is illegal under US LAW.at first glance. None of this seems rare. After all, more than 3 billion pennies were struck in 1967. That's a massive number. So how could any of them be valuable? The answer lies in condition and errors. Most 1967 pennies spent decades in circulation. They were dropped in parking lots, tossed into tip jars, and passed through vending machines. Finding one today in pristine condition, especially with its original red copper color, is surprisingly difficult. Collectors grade coins based on wear, luster, and strike quality. A typical worn 1967 penny is worth only face value, but a sharply struck, uncirculated example with full mint red color can be worth several dollars, and in top grades much more. But where this coin truly gets exciting is in error varieties. One of the most famous errors associated with 1967 pennies is the double die obverse. This happens when the coin die receives multiple misaligned impressions during its creation, causing doubling on parts of the design. On certain 1967 pennies, collectors have found doubling in the date, the word liberty, and even Lincoln's profile. These coins look normal at first, but under magnification, the letters appear thickened or shadowed, as if they were printed twice. Another sought-after error is the off-center strike, where the design is noticeably shifted away from the center of the coin, leaving part of the blank planchet visible. Some 1967 pennies have also been discovered struck on the wrong metal, including planchets meant for other denominations. These mint mistakes are rare and highly collectible because they were never supposed to exist. So how valuable can these coins really be? In average circulated condition, a 1967 penny is worth 1 cent. In uncirculated condition, it typically sells for between 10 and 50 cents. But in higher grades, especially mint state 67 or higher, prices jump dramatically. Certified examples in top condition have sold at auction for over $1,000, and in some cases close to $4,000 depending on color designation and strike quality. Error coins are where prices climb even higher. A genuine 1967 double die penny can sell anywhere from a few $100s to several thousand, depending on how strong and visible the doubling is. Off-metal strikes and dramatic off-center examples have also sold for similar amounts, especially when authenticated and graded by professional services. Now let's talk about how to tell if your 1967 penny might be special. First, check the date. It should read 1967 with no mint mark beneath it. That's normal for this year. Next, look at the coin's condition. Is Lincoln's face sharp, or is it worn smooth? Are the letters crisp, or are they fading? Does the coin still have a reddish copper glow, or has it turned brown? The better the condition, the more potential value it has. Then, grab a magnifying glass and inspect the lettering and numbers. Look closely at the word liberty. the date, and "In God We Trust." If you see doubling, especially strong, clean doubling, you may have an error worth professional evaluation. Also check if the design is centered. If it looks shifted or incomplete, that's another sign of a mint error. As for fakes, most counterfeiters focus on higher value coins like rare dates or gold pieces, so fake 1967 pennies are uncommon. However, altered coins do exist, where someone tries to add doubling or modify the date. The best protection is professional grading. Reputable services like PCGS and NGC authenticate coins and assign official grades, making them easier to sell and trust. Now here's a fun fact most people don't know. Because mint marks were removed from 1965 to 1967, no U.S. coin officially carries a mint mark dated 1967. Not pennies, not nickels, not dimes, not quarters, and not half dollars. It's the only year in modern American coinage where every circulating coin lacks a mint mark, regardless of where it was produced. That alone makes the 1967 penny historically unique. Another surprising detail is that although proofs were officially discontinued during this period, special mint sets were still produced, and some 1967 pennies in these sets have exceptional strikes and surfaces. These coins often show better detail and smoother fields than regular circulation strikes, making them especially appealing to collectors chasing high-grade examples. Collectors love the 1967 penny because it represents a turning point in U.S. minting history. It marks the end of traditional proof coinage for several years and captures the mint's response to a nationwide coin shortage. It's also one of the last pennies made entirely of copper before composition changes in later decades. And perhaps most importantly, it's a reminder that even common coins can hide rare treasures in plain sight. Many collectors today started their journey with coins just like this, a simple penny pulled from pocket change that sparked curiosity and led to deeper exploration. The 1967 Lincoln cent is often one of those gateway coins, easy to find, easy to study, but still full of surprises for those who look closely enough. So if you've got a jar of old pennies sitting at home, take a moment to search for the date 1967. Check the condition. Look for doubling. Examine the edges and strike. You might just discover that a coin you've ignored for decades is quietly worth far more than you ever imagined. Because sometimes, history doesn't come in the form of gold bars or rare treasures locked in vaults. Sometimes it's sitting right in your hand, disguised as an ordinary penny. And who knows, the next time you hear that soft clink of coins in your pocket, it might not just be spare change. It might be a piece of history waiting to be discovered. What if I told you that a penny you've probably ignored your entire life could be quietly sitting in a jar, drawer, or old wallet right now, and be worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin most people overlook, but collectors know deserves a second look. The 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln cent is one of the most common pennies ever made, yet it also hides some surprising value potential. No-mint mark means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not place mint marks on coins at that time. These pennies were used every day, in grocery stores, vending machines, school lunches, and gas stations, making them a quiet part of everyday American life. But behind that ordinary appearance is a fascinating story. To understand this coin, we need to travel back to 1973. The United States was dealing with inflation, rising prices, and an economy in transition. Copper was still affordable enough to use in pennies, but that was about to change. Just a few years later, the U.S. Mint would switch to copper-plated zinc coins. But in 1973, pennies were still made mostly of copper, about 95% copper, with a small amount of zinc, giving them a solid weight and a rich reddish-brown color when new. That year, the Philadelphia Mint struck more than 2 billion Lincoln cents. Yes, billion with a B. These coins flooded circulation and were used heavily for decades. While Denver and San Francisco also made pennies that year, the no-mint mark version came exclusively from Philadelphia, making it the most common variety. But common does not always mean worthless, and that's where this coin becomes interesting. The design of the 1973 penny features Abraham Lincoln on the front, a portrait originally created by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to honor Lincoln's 100th birthday. By 1973, this design had already been in use for over 6 decades. Lincoln faces right with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, liberty to the left, and the date to the right. On the back, You'll see two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This reverse design had been replaced in 1959 with the Lincoln Memorial, so in 1973, the coin actually shows the memorial building instead. A detail many people don't even notice. At first glance, the 1973 penny seems ordinary. But collectors pay close attention to condition and errors. Most 1973 pennies were heavily circulated, meaning they have scratches, worn lettering, and dull surfaces. But examples that survived in mint condition, especially ones never spent, can be surprisingly valuable. Coins graded in high mint state condition, especially with sharp detail and original luster, are much harder to find than you might expect. Even more exciting are error coins. Some 1973 pennies were struck with mistakes during the minting process. These include double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and wrong metal errors. A double die occurs when part of the design appears doubled, especially in the date or lettering. These errors happen when the die strikes the coin slightly misaligned during production. Collectors prize these because they are accidental, rare, and visually striking. One of the most valuable known 1973 penny errors is the double die obverse variety, where the word Liberty or the date shows noticeable doubling. These coins can sell for hundreds, and sometimes thousands, depending on condition. Another rare type includes off-metal errors, where the penny was accidentally struck on a blank meant for another coin. These are extremely scarce and can command significant premiums. So why would a coin with billions made ever be worth serious money? The answer is survival and quality. While billions were produced, very few remain in perfect condition. Most were worn down by decades of circulation. Mint condition coins, especially ones graded MS67 or higher, are rare because it takes exceptional preservation to reach that level. When collectors compete for the best-known examples, prices can climb quickly. Real auction results prove this. High-grade 1973 no-mint mark pennies have sold for several $100s at major coin auctions. In some cases, pristine red examples graded at the top of the scale have crossed the $1,000 mark. Error coins from this year have sold anywhere from $200 to over $3,000 depending on rarity and condition. That's a remarkable return for something that once bought a piece of candy. If you think you might have one of these coins, identifying it is easier than you might expect. First, check the date. It must read 1973. Then look just below the date. If there is no letter, no D, and no S, that means it came from Philadelphia and is the no-mint mark variety. Next, inspect the coin's surface. Look for doubling in the letters or numbers, unusual shapes, missing parts of the rim, or strange thickness. A magnifying glass can help reveal details your eyes might miss. Spot counterfeits. Remember this. Most fake pennies are altered dates or modified coins. The 1973 penny is not usually faked in large numbers because the base value is low unless it's a rare error or high-grade specimen. But if someone claims a coin is extremely valuable, make sure it's professionally graded by a reputable service like PCGS or NGC. These companies authenticate and grade coins, sealing them in protective holders with official labels. Here's a surprising fact. The 1973 penny was among the last years before copper became too expensive for everyday coinage. In just a few years, pennies would be lighter, zinc-based, and less durable. That makes the 1973 penny part of the final chapter of America's traditional copper cent era. Many collectors enjoy assembling sets of copper pennies from the early 1970s, and the 1973 no-mint mark coin plays a key role in those collections. Another fun detail is how many of these pennies were saved unintentionally. During the early 1980s, rumors spread that copper pennies were worth more than face value because of rising metal prices. Many people began hoarding older cents, especially ones from before 1982. As a result, thousands of 1973 pennies were pulled from circulation and stored away in jars, boxes, and envelopes. Some of those coins remain untouched today, still waiting to be rediscovered. Collectors love this coin not because it's flashy, but because it represents something deeper. It tells the story of everyday American life in the early 1970s, a time of economic change, cultural shifts, and growing uncertainty. This penny passed through countless hands, crossed state lines, and witnessed history quietly, one transaction at a time. For collectors, holding one is like holding a small piece of that era. Another reason collectors appreciate the 1973 no-mint mark penny is accessibility. You don't need thousands of dollars to get started. You can search rolls from banks, old piggy banks, or family coin jars. That sense of treasure hunting, of finding something valuable in something ordinary, is what draws many people into coin collecting in the first place. And the 1973 penny offers exactly that experience. Some collectors specialize in error coins, others in high-grade examples, and others in complete date sets. The 1973 no-mint mark penny fits into all three categories. It's common enough to find, rare enough in top condition to be exciting, and historically important as part of the final copper cent generation. So what should you do if you find one? First, don't clean it. Cleaning can lower a coin's value dramatically by damaging the surface. Instead, store it in a soft holder or envelope and handle it only by the edges. If you suspect it might be special, consider having it evaluated by a professional coin dealer or grading service. The next time you see a penny on the ground, in your change, or at the bottom of a drawer, take a moment to look at it. That small copper coin might be telling a much bigger story than you expect. The 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln penny reminds us that history doesn't always come in gold or silver. Sometimes, it comes in copper, quiet, humble, and waiting to be noticed. And who knows? Somewhere out there right now, a forgotten jar of pennies might be holding a high-grade 1973 cent or a rare minting error, just waiting for someone to look closely enough to discover it. So before you toss your spare change aside, take another look. Your next great find might already be in your pocket. What if I told you a single penny from your pocket change could be hiding a story that most people walk right past every day? A coin that looks ordinary at first glance, yet carries history, mystery, and the kind of small surprises that collectors live for. Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. This coin is part of the Lincoln Memorial Cent series, one of the longest-running designs in American coin history. When people hear no-mint mark, they often wonder if that means the coin is rare or valuable. In some cases, it absolutely can be. But even when it's not worth a fortune, a coin like this still holds an important place in U.S. history and in the world of everyday collectibles. The year 1979 sits right at the edge of major changes in American coinage. Inflation was high, copper prices were rising, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to find cheaper ways to produce coins. At the same time, millions of Americans were still using pennies daily, in vending machines, parking meters, and grocery stores. The penny wasn't just small change. It was a symbol of everyday life. In 1979, Lincoln cents were produced at three main facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Denver carry a D mint mark. San Francisco coins usually have an S, and were mostly made for collectors. But coins from Philadelphia during this period carried no mint mark at all. That's why when you see a 1979 penny without a letter under the date, it means it was struck in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia made a lot of them. Over 4 billion Lincoln cents were produced there in 1979 alone. That makes the coin common in general circulation, but not all examples are created equal. Condition, striking quality, and especially errors can turn an ordinary penny into something collectors want. The 1979 no-mint mark penny is made primarily of copper. Unlike later pennies that switched to a zinc core with copper plating, this coin contains about 95% copper and 5% zinc. That gives it a slightly heavier feel and a richer color compared to modern cents. It weighs about 3.11 grams, which is heavier than pennies made after 1982. On the front, the coin shows Abraham Lincoln facing right, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor his 100th birthday. The word liberty appears on the left, in God we trust, across the top, and the year 1979 on the right. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was the reverse design from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. At first glance, most 1979 no-mint mark pennies look identical. But collectors know that some carry small details that make a big difference. One thing they look for is strong strike quality. Coins with sharp lettering, bold lines in Lincoln's hair, and clear details on the memorial are more desirable, especially if they've never been circulated. Then there are error coins, which are where things get truly interesting. Some 1979 pennies were struck with off-center designs, where part of the image is missing because the coin blank wasn't properly aligned. Others show doubled dies, where letters or numbers appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. These errors are rare compared to normal coins, and they can significantly increase value. One known variety collectors watch for is the 1979 doubled die obverse. In these coins, the date or the word Liberty appears doubled when viewed under magnification. These aren't common, and when authenticated, they can sell for much more than face value. Another error type includes broad strikes, where the coin spreads out wider than normal and loses its raised rim. Some even show clips, where part of the edge is missing because the metal blank was improperly cut. Each of these tells a story about what went wrong at the mint, and collectors love these mistakes because they make each coin unique. Now, let's talk about value. In circulated condition, meaning the coin has been used in everyday transactions and shows where a 1979 no-mint mark penny is usually worth face value or just slightly more. Sometimes a few cents, maybe 10 or 20 cents, especially because of its copper content. But in uncirculated condition, the value changes. A bright, untouched example graded by a professional service like PCGS or NGC can sell for several dollars. In higher mint state grades, especially MS66 or MS67, prices can rise into the tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on demand and eye appeal. Error coins tell an even more exciting story. A genuine double die 1979 no-mint mark penny has sold at auction for hundreds of dollars. Dramatic off-center strikes can bring anywhere from $50 to several $100 depending on how much of the design is visible and how clean the strike looks. Broad strikes and clipped planchets also attract strong collector interest. These prices show something important. It's not always the year that makes a coin valuable. It's the combination of condition, rarity, and uniqueness. Millions of people have spent 1979 pennies without giving them a second thought, but a small percentage were special from the moment they were struck. So how can you tell if you might have something special? Start by checking the date and looking just below it. If there's no letter, you have a Philadelphia coin. Next, look closely at the surface. Is the coin shiny and bright or dull and worn? Sharper details usually mean higher potential value. Then examine the lettering and numbers. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Look for doubling, especially in Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date. Check the edges to see if they're even and complete. If the coin looks wider than normal, thinner at the rim, or missing part of its edge, it could be an error. Also weigh the coin if possible. A genuine 1979 copper penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. A significantly lighter weight might indicate damage or a different composition, especially if it was altered after minting. As for fakes, most counterfeit pennies aren't made to fool collectors because face value coins aren't profitable to fake. But altered coins do exist, especially ones where someone tries to create fake doubling or adds damage to simulate errors. Real double dies will show clean, rounded doubling, not scratched or jagged lines. When in doubt, professional grading services are the best way to confirm authenticity. Now here's something fun. The year 1979 is also known for another famous coin, the Susan B. Anthony dollar, the first U.S. coin to feature a real woman. That same year, while Americans were getting used to a new dollar coin, billions of copper Lincoln cents quietly continued circulating, including the penny we're talking about today. It's a reminder that even during major changes, everyday coins still carried on. Another surprising detail is how close 1979 is to the end of copper pennies. Just 3 years later, in 1982, the mint changed the penny's composition to zinc with copper plating. That makes the 1979 penny part of the last generation of classic copper cents, which adds to its appeal among collectors who prefer heavier, traditional coins. Collectors also love this coin because it represents an era when pennies were still widely used and taken seriously in commerce. It's a symbol of a time when exact change mattered, when you drop a handful of cents into a jar at the end of the day, and when every coin had weight, literally and figuratively. For beginners, the 1979 no-mint mark penny is an ideal starting point. It's easy to find, affordable, and teaches important lessons about mint marks, errors, grading, and how condition affects value. For advanced collectors, High-grade examples and error varieties offer a challenge and an opportunity to own something truly special from an otherwise ordinary year. There's also something satisfying about knowing that a valuable coin might already be sitting in your change jar, coin album, or old coffee can in the closet. Unlike gold or silver coins, Lincoln cents were made for everyday use, which means discoveries can still happen. People still find high-grade and error coins in circulation today, even decades after they were minted. The 1979 no-mint mark penny may not be famous like the 1909 SVDB or the 1955 double die, but it holds its own place in American coin history. It tells the story of a nation adjusting to economic pressure, of a mint producing billions of coins under tight budgets, and of small mistakes that turned ordinary cents into collectibles. And perhaps the most exciting part is this. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars or attend high-end auctions to get involved. All you need is curiosity, a magnifying glass, and a few moments to look closely at the coins you already have. That simple habit has led many collectors to discoveries they never expected. So the next time you see a penny dated 1979 with no mint mark, don't dismiss it. Hold it in your hand. Look at the details. Think about where it's been, how many hands it's passed through, and what story it might be hiding. Because sometimes, the most ordinary-looking coins carry the most interesting secrets, and the next great find might already be waiting in your pocket. Imagine pulling a single penny from your pocket and realizing it could be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's gold or ancient, but because of where, when, and how it was made. Today, we're uncovering the story behind one of the most overlooked modern coins in American history, the 1985 D. Lincoln penny, at first glance. This coin looks completely ordinary. It's small, copper-colored, and easy to ignore. But this penny came from a critical period in U.S. coin production, a time when the mint was changing how coins were made, and small mistakes created big opportunities for collectors. The 1985 D. Lincoln cent is one of those coins that hides its story in plain sight. This penny was struck in 1985 at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small D mint mark beneath the date. It features the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was used from 1959 until 2008. By 1985, this design had already been in circulation for more than 25 years, and millions of Americans saw it every day without giving it a second thought. But 1985 was not just another year for pennies. It came during a major shift in how the United States made its 1-cent coins. For decades, pennies were made mostly of copper. But rising copper prices in the early 1980s forced the U.S. Mint to change the composition. In 1982, pennies officially became copper-plated zinc instead of solid copper. By 1985, this new metal structure was fully in use, but the transition years had already created confusion, testing issues, and unexpected errors. That makes the 1985 D penny part of a fascinating chapter in American coin history. It represents the modern era of pennies, when efficiency and cost-saving became more important than metal value. Yet, ironically, some of these modern pennies ended up becoming more valuable than many older ones, simply because of how they were struck. The design itself is simple but iconic. Lincoln's portrait shows him facing right, calm and thoughtful, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head and "Liberty" to the left. The date and mint mark sit to the right. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with tiny details that even show Lincoln's statue inside the building. For collectors, sharpness in these details is important, especially in higher-grade coins. Now let's talk about what makes the 1985 D penny special. In regular condition, this coin is very common. Over 5 billion were minted in Denver alone. That's more pennies than most people could imagine. And because of that, most worn examples are worth just face value. But where things get interesting is in condition and errors point. One of the most famous varieties associated with the 1985 penny is the double die error. This happens when the coin die shifts slightly during the minting process, causing parts of the design to appear doubled. On some 1985 pennies, collectors have found strong doubling in the date and lettering, especially in Liberty and In God We Trust. These are not machine doubling marks that look flat and blurry, but real double dies with rounded, raised doubling that collectors seek. Another known issue from 1985 involves off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and weak strikes caused by worn dies. While these are less famous than doubled dies, they still attract attention when they are dramatic enough. A penny missing part of its edge or showing a shifted design can instantly turn a 1-cent coin into a collectible worth many times more. But the real excitement comes from condition rarity. Most 1985 D pennies were heavily circulated, meaning they show wear on Lincoln's face and flattening on the Lincoln Memorial. But a small number were saved in perfect or near-perfect condition straight from mint rolls. These coins, especially those graded MS-67 or higher by professional grading services, are extremely hard to find. In fact, auction records show that high-grade 1985 D pennies have sold for surprising amounts. A certified MS-67 red example has sold for several $100s, and in rare cases even higher when demand spikes. Coins with strong doubling or dramatic mint errors can sell for anywhere from $50 to several $1,000s depending on clarity, condition, and eye appeal. This surprises many people because 1985 doesn't feel old. But in coin collecting, rarity in condition often matters more than age. When billions of coins are produced, only a tiny fraction survive in flawless condition. That's what creates value. So how can you tell if you might have something special? Start by checking the date and mint mark. You're looking for 1985 with a small d beneath the date. Then examine the coin closely under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. Look at the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. If they appear clearly doubled, not blurry or smeared, you may have a doubled die. Next, check the edges and shape of the coin. Any missing metal, unusual cuts, or off-center designs could indicate a mint error. Also look at the color and surface quality. A bright red coin with sharp details and no visible wear could be a high-grade example worth having professionally evaluated. Avoid collectors' traps like artificially polished coins, which lose value rather than gain it. Natural surfaces and original mint luster are what collectors want. Fake pennies do exist, but they are rare in modern coins like this. Most altered coins come from people trying to create fake errors by carving or damaging the coin. Real mint errors usually look smooth and natural, not rough or scratched. When in doubt, professional grading services can authenticate and grade coins for a fee. Here's a surprising fact about the 1985 penny. Even though it's copper-colored, it's actually mostly zinc inside with just a thin copper coating. If you weigh one, it should be about 2.5 grams. Older copper pennies weigh around 3.11 grams. This difference helps collectors identify composition changes and spot unusual errors, like wrong planchet strikes, which are extremely rare but incredibly valuable. Another interesting detail is that 1985 pennies are known for strong strike quality compared to some earlier 1980s issues. This means many coins have sharp details, making it harder to find truly rare condition examples, but easier to spot errors when they exist. That combination keeps collectors interested decades later. Collectors love the 1985 D penny because it represents the modern penny era while still offering the thrill of discovery. It's affordable to collect, easy to find, and yet still capable of surprising you with hidden value. Many serious collectors began their journey by searching through pocket change, and coins like this one are exactly why. There's something powerful about holding a coin that passed through millions of hands and realizing it might be worth far more than anyone ever expected. It reminds us that history doesn't always sit in museums or vaults. Sometimes, it sits quietly in a jar on your dresser or at the bottom of your wallet. Today, collectors continue searching rolls of pennies for rare 1985 D varieties, hoping to spot that one coin with doubled lettering, perfect surfaces, or a strange mint error. And every year, new discoveries are made as more people take a closer look at what they once ignored. So the next time you see a 1985 penny with a small D under the date, don't dismiss it. Turn it over. Tilt it under the light. Look closely at the letters and numbers. You might be holding a tiny piece of modern American history, and possibly something worth far more than 1 cent, because in the world of coin collecting, the most valuable treasures are often hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone curious enough to notice them. What if I told you that one of the most overlooked pennies in modern American history could already be sitting in your pocket, quietly holding collector value that most people never notice? Today, we're uncovering the real story behind the 1995 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, A coin that looks ordinary at first glance but carries some surprising secrets once you know what to look for. The 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint. When a coin has no mint mark, it usually means it was made in Philadelphia, which traditionally did not use a mint mark on pennies for most of its history. Millions of these coins were produced, and most people spent them without a second thought. But certain versions of this penny, especially those with unusual features or errors, have caught the attention of collectors and created lasting interest in what seems like an everyday coin. To understand this penny, we need to step back to the mid-1990s. In 1995, the United States Mint was producing billions of coins every year to meet demand from banks, businesses, and everyday transactions. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for more than 85 years, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1995, the design was one of the most familiar images in American money. The front of the coin still showed Victor David Brenner's famous portrait of Lincoln, and the back featured the Lincoln Memorial design, which had been used since 1959. The economy in the mid-1990s was growing, and coin production was high. That meant the Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents in 1995. Most of these coins were made for everyday use, not collectors. They were meant to move quickly through pockets, wallets, and cash registers. But within this massive production run, a few coins stood out for reasons no one expected at the time. The 1995 penny is made of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change in composition happened in 1982, when rising copper prices made solid copper cents too expensive to produce. So while the coin looks copper-colored, it's actually mostly zinc inside. The diameter is about the size of a standard penny, and it weighs roughly 2.5 grams. On the front, you'll see Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" at the top, "Liberty" to the left, and the date on the right. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, along with United States of America and 1 cent. At first glance, there's nothing special about this coin. But collectors know that some 1995 pennies were struck with small differences that make them much more interesting. One of the most famous is the 1995 double die obverse penny. This variety shows noticeable doubling in the lettering on the front of the coin, especially in Liberty and "In God We Trust." Instead of clean, sharp letters, you'll see what looks like shadows or extra outlines. This doubling happened during the die-making process, when the design was impressed onto the die more than once at slightly different angles. Not every 1995 penny has this feature. In fact, only a small percentage do, which makes them far more desirable to collectors. While millions of normal 1995 pennies exist, the double die version is scarce enough to be considered a true collectible, even though it comes from a modern year. So why is the 1995 no mint mark penny valuable at all? The answer comes down to condition and variety. A typical circulated 1995 penny without errors is usually worth only face value. But in uncirculated condition, especially if graded by a professional coin service, it can sell for a few dollars. That might not sound exciting, but for a modern penny, that's already above average. The real interest comes from the double die obverse variety. These coins have sold at auction for anywhere from $20 to over $100, depending on condition. In higher grades, especially those showing strong doubling and minimal wear, prices can climb even higher. Some certified examples in near-perfect condition have sold for several $100s. That's a huge jump from 1 cent to hundreds of dollars, all because of a small mistake in the minting process. There are also other minor errors found on some 1995 pennies, such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and die cracks. These error coins can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to several hundred, depending on how dramatic the mistake is and how well the coin has been preserved. Each one tells a story about what happened inside the minting presses on the day it was made. If you're wondering how to tell if you have a valuable 1995 no mint mark penny, the first step is to look closely at the front of the coin. Use a magnifying glass or a phone camera with zoom. Focus on the word "Liberty" and the phrase "In God We Trust." On the double die variety, the letters will appear doubled, especially the word "Liberty," which often shows the strongest effect. The doubling should look like a clear separation, not just wear or damage. If the letters look thick or fuzzy but not clearly doubled, it's probably not the real variety. Next, check the overall condition. Coins with bright surfaces, sharp details, and no major scratches or discoloration are more desirable. If you think you've found something special, consider having it authenticated and graded by a professional service. This not only confirms that the coin is genuine, but also helps establish its market value if you decide to sell. One surprising fact about the 1995 double die penny is that it became popular with collectors while it was still in circulation. Unlike many famous errors from earlier decades that were discovered years later, people started finding and saving these coins in the 1990s. That means some examples are still out there in decent condition, hiding in old jars, drawers, and collections. It's one of the few modern pennies that ordinary people have a real chance of finding without spending a fortune. Another fun detail is how this coin fits into the larger story of the Lincoln cent. The 1995 penny came during the final years of the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, which was replaced in 2009 with special designs and later the Union Shield Reverse. That means this coin represents the closing chapter of a design era that lasted 50 years. For collectors, that alone adds historical interest, even without errors. Collectors love the 1995 no-mint mark penny because it combines accessibility with discovery. You don't need to buy expensive rolls or rare sets to find one. You might already have one in your change. And yet, the possibility of finding a double die or other error makes every coin inspection feel like a small treasure hunt. It's the kind of coin that draws people into the hobby, teaching them how to observe details, learn minting history, and understand why even modern coins can become collectible. There's also something satisfying about turning something ordinary into something special. A penny most people would toss aside can suddenly become a valued piece of American numismatic history. That transformation from everyday change to collectible treasure is one of the reasons coins like the 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny continue to capture attention. So the next time you get change at a store or open an old jar of pennies, take a moment to look at the dates. If you spot a 1995 with no-mint mark, don't dismiss it. Check the lettering carefully. You might be holding a double die variety or a clean, uncirculated example worth far more than its face value. Even if it turns out to be a normal coin, you've still held a small piece of American history in your hand. And that's the real story behind the 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. It's not about instant riches. It's about discovery, history, and the thrill of knowing that sometimes value hides in the most ordinary places. So keep your eyes open, keep checking your change, and remember, the next rare coin story might already be waiting in your pocket. Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, but might actually be worth far more than 1 cent. Most people pass these coins every day without a second thought. But today, we're diving into a penny from the 1990s that has quietly caught the attention of collectors all across America, the 1996 D Lincoln penny. This coin was minted in Denver in 1996 and features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. At first glance, it looks just like millions of other pennies from the modern era. But as with many coins, the real story begins when you take a closer look at the details, the condition, and the small differences that can turn a common coin into something surprisingly collectible. The year 1996 was an important moment in American history. The country was enjoying a period of economic growth, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins to meet everyday demand. That year, the Denver Mint alone struck over 6.5 billion Lincoln cents. These coins were meant for daily use, buying groceries, riding buses, and dropping into tip jars. No one at the time imagined that collectors decades later would be carefully examining them under magnifying glasses. The Lincoln penny itself has one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coin history. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, it replaced the Indian head cent and became the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. By 1996, the design was well established, Lincoln's profile on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, with tiny statues visible between the columns if you look closely enough. The 1996 D penny is made mostly of zinc with a thin copper coating on the outside. This composition started in 1982, replacing the older solid copper pennies that had become too expensive to produce. Even though it looks like copper, more than 97% of the coin is actually zinc. It weighs just 2.5 grams, making it lighter than older Lincoln cents from earlier decades. One of the most interesting things about the 1996 D penny is how condition affects its value. Because billions were made, most are worth exactly 1 cent. But collectors search for coins in pristine condition. Coins that were never circulated, never scratched, and never dulled by time. These are called uncirculated coins, and they often come straight from mint rolls or collector sets. Another layer of excitement comes from errors and unusual strikes. While the 1996 D penny does not have a famous, widely known error variety, collectors have found examples with off-center strikes, doubled lettering, weak strikes, or missing details. These kinds of mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the production process, and even small mistakes can make a coin far more valuable than its face value. Some collectors also pay close attention to the sharpness of Lincoln's portrait, the clarity of the date, and the details of the Lincoln Memorial. A coin with strong, crisp lines and full original luster, that shiny glow coins have when they leave the mint, can command a premium over worn examples. So, how valuable is the 1996 D Lincoln penny? In everyday circulated condition, it's usually worth just 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents at most. But uncirculated examples, especially those graded by professional coin grading services, can sell for several dollars. High-grade specimens with nearly perfect surfaces have sold at auction for $10, $20, and in rare cases, even higher depending on demand and condition. One notable sale involved a 1996 D penny graded in top mint condition that sold for over $50 at auction. That may not sound life-changing, but consider this. It started as a coin someone might have ignored in their change. And for collectors who enjoy the thrill of searching rolls or jars of pennies, that possibility alone makes the hunt worthwhile. Error coins can bring even stronger prices. A 1996 D penny with a clear off-center strike or doubled lettering might sell for $25, $50, or more depending on how dramatic the error is and how well the coin is preserved. These mistakes turn ordinary coins into miniature stories of what went wrong and what collectors love. Identifying a genuine 1996 D penny is fairly simple. First, check the date under Lincoln's portrait. It should read 1996. Then look just below the date for the mint mark. A small d means it was struck in Denver. No mint mark would indicate Philadelphia. The weight should be about 2.5 grams, and the coin should stick to none of the tests for magnetism. Since it contains no steel.to spot valuable examples, look for strong detail and shine. A magnifying glass can help reveal doubling on letters or numbers, off-center designs, or unusual surfaces. Avoid cleaning coins even if they look dirty. Cleaning can damage the surface and dramatically reduce collector value, even on coins that appear worn. Counterfeits of modern pennies are extremely rare because the value usually doesn't justify fake production. Still, altered dates and fake errors do exist. The safest way to confirm a valuable example is through professional grading services or trusted coin dealers who can authenticate and evaluate the coin properly. One fun fact about the 1996 penny is that it comes from a time when the Lincoln Memorial reverse design was nearing the end of its run. Just a few years later, in 2009, the U.S. Mint would introduce special reverse designs for Lincoln's bicentennial, and then switch to the Union Shield reverse in 2010. That makes the 1996 penny part of the final stretch of a historic design that lasted nearly 50 years. Another interesting detail is that 1996 pennies often show better strike quality than some earlier zinc cents, especially those from the mid-1980s. Collectors sometimes find sharper details and stronger lettering on late 1990s issues, making high-grade examples easier to spot and more appealing to build sets around. Collectors love the 1996 D penny not because it's extremely rare, but because it represents something deeper about the hobby. It reminds people that valuable coins don't always come from ancient history or forgotten treasure chests. Sometimes they come from everyday life, from a drawer, a piggy bank, or the bottom of a purse. This coin is also popular with beginners. It's affordable, easy to find, and a great way to learn about grading, mint marks, and condition. For experienced collectors, it becomes part of larger projects, like assembling complete date and mint sets of Lincoln cents or searching for the finest examples known. There's something satisfying about holding a small coin and knowing it passed through countless hands, businesses, and moments in everyday American life. Every scratch tells a story. Every uncirculated surface represents a moment frozen in time. A coin that somehow escaped while millions of others did not. And that's what makes the 1996 D Lincoln penny special. It's not rare in numbers, but rare in opportunity. It offers the chance for anyone, collector or not, to discover something meaningful in ordinary change. It's proof that history doesn't always live in museums. Sometimes, it lives quietly in your pocket, so the next time you receive change. Don't rush past those copper-colored coins. Take a moment. Check the dates. Look for that small D. You might be holding a piece of American history, and possibly a collectible treasure hiding in plain sight. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the most common-looking penny can carry an uncommon story. And sometimes, the most surprising discoveries start with just 1 cent. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But what if I told you that one small detail on a 1972 Lincoln cent has turned ordinary pocket change into coins worth thousands of dollars? And the most valuable ones don't look rare at all. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1972 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have held, spent, and forgotten. Yet a tiny number of these coins have become legends in the coin collecting world. Let's start with what this coin actually is. A 1972 Lincoln penny with no mint mark means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Back then, Philadelphia didn't use a mint mark on pennies, so the front of the coin shows only Lincoln's portrait and the date. No letter under the date. That's normal. But what makes this coin special isn't what's missing. It's what went wrong during production. To understand why this penny exists in the first place, we need to go back to 1972. The United States was still using the Lincoln Memorial Cent design, which had been introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By the early 1970s, the penny had become one of the most widely used coins in daily life. Vending machines, parking meters, payphones, and everyday purchases all relied on cents. So the U.S. Mint was producing billions of them each year. In 1972 alone, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 2.9 billion pennies. That's billion with a B. Most of those coins are still only worth 1 cent today. But hidden among those billions was a tiny batch of coins that left the mint with a serious mistake. And that mistake turned them into one of the most famous Lincoln cent varieties ever discovered. Let's talk about the design. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1972 to the right. On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial with the words "United States of America" at the top and 1 cent at the bottom. Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated in the center. The coin is made mostly of copper, with a small amount of tin and zinc, giving it that warm reddish-brown color when news. Oh, what went wrong? During the coin-making process, dies are used to stamp designs onto blank metal discs. Sometimes, if the die receives multiple impressions that are slightly misaligned, it creates a doubled image on the coin. This is called a double die error, and in 1972, one of the most dramatic double dies in U.S. coin history slipped into circulation on the rare 1972 double die obverse penny. The doubling is bold and easy to see, even without a magnifying glass. The words "In God We Trust" look thick and doubled. The date, 1972, appears doubled, especially on the numbers. Even the word "Liberty" shows clear separation between the letters. It looks almost like the coin was stamped twice, slightly off-center. What makes this error especially exciting is that it's not subtle. Many double die errors require careful inspection, but this one practically jumps off the coin. That's why collectors call it one of the most dramatic double dies ever made on a Lincoln cent. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though nearly 3 billion pennies were struck in 1972 at Philadelphia, only a small number of the double die versions entered circulation. Estimates vary, but most experts believe only around 20,000 to 30,000 examples exist today, and many of those are worn, damaged, or lost. That tiny survival rate is what drives the value. In circulated condition, a real 1972 double die penny can sell for several $100s. In better condition, prices jump quickly. Coins in uncirculated condition often sell for over $1,000. And top-quality examples have sold for several $1,000s at major auctions. One of the most impressive sales involved a high-grade certified example that sold for over $14,000. That's $14,000 for a penny someone might have once spent on a piece of candy or dropped between couch cushions. But it's important to understand that not every 1972 no-mint mark penny is valuable. The vast majority are common and worth only face value, or maybe a few cents for their copper content. The real treasure is the double die obverse variety. So how can you tell if you might have one? First, look at the front of the coin. Focus on the words, "In God we trust." On the rare variety, you'll see clear doubling, especially on "In God" and "Trust." The letters look thicker, almost shadowed. Next, look at the date. The numbers, especially the 7 and 2, should show noticeable doubling. Then check Liberty. If the coin is genuine, the doubling will look strong and consistent, not blurry or smeared. This is important because many people mistake machine doubling for true double die errors. Machine doubling happens during the striking process and usually looks flat, shelf-like, or distorted. True double dies, like the 1972 variety, show rounded, raised, and well-defined doubling that's part of the design itself. If you think you've found one, the best step is to have it authenticated and graded by a professional coin grading service. That protects you from fakes and helps establish the coin's real market value. Now, let's talk about real-world examples. Collectors have been searching for this coin since the early 1970s, when sharp-eyed hobbyists first noticed something unusual in their pocket change. Stories spread quickly through coin shops and magazines. People began checking rolls of pennies from banks, hoping to strike gold. Over the years, many collectors have shared stories of finding one in circulation, in old jars, or even in inherited collections. One famous example came from a collector who found a 1972 double die penny in a roll from a local bank and later sold it for several $1,000s. That kind of discovery keeps people searching to this day. And here's the fascinating part. Even though most examples have likely already been found, there's still a chance that some are hiding in old collections, coin jars, or forgotten drawers. Every time someone dumps out a jar of pennies, the possibility exists that a rare double die is sitting quietly among ordinary cents. There are also some surprising details about this coin that many people don't realize. For example, the 1972 double die penny is often compared to the famous 1955 double die cent, which is one of the most iconic error coins in U.S. history. But many experts believe the 1972 doubling is even stronger and more dramatic than the 1955 version. The only reason the 1955 is more famous is because it entered circulation in a very concentrated area and was discovered quickly, while the 1972 was scattered more widely. Another fun fact is that this error happened during a time when the U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities of coins as inflation rose and coin shortages became common. Speed mattered more than perfection, and that environment made errors like this more likely to slip through unnoticed. Collectors today love the 1972 double die penny for several reasons. First, the error is bold and easy to see, making it perfect for beginners who want to learn about error coins without needing expensive equipment. Second, it has a great story. Billions made, thousands survived, and a few lucky finds changed people's lives. Third, it connects directly to everyday American history. This wasn't a special commemorative coin. It was something you could have received as change at a grocery store, a gas station, or a movie theater. And finally, it represents the thrill of the hunt. Unlike rare gold coins locked away in vaults, this penny came from circulation. Anyone, at any time, could find one. That idea alone keeps collectors searching rolls, jars, and old collections decades later. So what should you do if you have 1972 pennies? Take a few minutes and look closely at them. Check the front for strong doubling on the date, the motto, and the word Liberty. If something looks unusual, don't clean the coin. Cleaning can damage the surface and reduce its value. Instead, store it safely and consider having it professionally evaluated. Even if you don't find the famous double die, you're still holding a small piece of American history. Every Lincoln cent tells a story about the time it was made, the economy, and the people who used it. And that's what makes the 1972 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny so fascinating. On the surface, it looks ordinary, but hidden within 1 year's production is a mistake that turned everyday change into collector gold. It's proof that sometimes the most valuable things are hiding in plain sight, so the next time you see a handful of pennies, don't rush to spend them. Take a second look, because one small detail on one tiny coin could be worth far more than you ever imagined.